Alright, let's go. Let's do this shit. Hello, everybody. Today, I wanted to talk about Eminem. I wanted to talk about my own personal opinions of him throughout his career and what has led him now to where he is post-Kamikaze. And just kind of talk about my own personal opinions on why he is where he is at today. And finally, mentioning what it is that I want from Eminem moving forward, if it is that I want anything else from Eminem. So I'm going to start in 96. This is when Infinite came out. Infinite is regarded as the first official studio album for Eminem. But I don't really have any attachment to this album. This album is just kind of a lot of holding back from Eminem. And he even said that in a lot of the tracks here, he tried to hold back a little bit because he wanted the Detroit radio stations to play his records. So there really isn't here the Eminem that is so world renowned. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking on this. There are a few decent records here, but the album initially only pressed 1,000 copies and it didn't even end up selling that much. And you can kind of tell why, just because there's a lot of lack in personality. Eminem hadn't found his sound yet, and he wouldn't have found it or begin to find it until 1998 when the Slim Shady EP dropped. So in the Slim Shady EP, you kind of start to see glimpses of Slim Shady and the Slim Shady alter ego that Eminem created, which in its own just expanded his freedom when it came to what he wanted to talk about. And he decided to use all his intricate rhyme schemes to talk about the craziest shit and not hold back the same way he did in Infinite. And he also improved on his production. He chose better beats, and a lot of these tracks, when listening to the Slim Shady LP, are just kind of demo-like sounds of what would end up in the first official album, the Slim Shady LP. But there's still a few little tweaks here and there that kind of change the beats and the different instrumentals. And there's also some original content like the track Low Down and Dirty, and when you're exposed to the very sexual, over-violent, and just very aggressive both flow and subject matter that Eminem has just portrayed throughout his entire career. And just the difference in personality just sets not only this Eminem project, but all the rest of Eminem's projects compared to Infinite. In Infinite, he just kind of felt a little bit lost, and in the Slim Shady EP and now moving forward, you finally get to hear Eminem once he's found his sound, which led to both his commercial and his critical success. So the very next year in 1999, the Slim Shady LP comes out, and this is fully recognized as Eminem's first actual album. And again, there's a big reason why the sound of Eminem is just completely different. And what I think is most memorable about this album is the subject matter. I think the most influential and important aspect about this project is the fact that Eminem was talking about all these crazy drug stories and making songs like Brain Damage, where he's talking about a bully beating him up in the school bathroom and then the principal walking in and helping him beat him up. And it's just these crazy anecdotal fantasies that expanded on the typical subject matter that other rappers were talking about and just kind of pushed it to the limit. It's the fact that Eminem went #1 and was making songs about giving an excessive amount of mushrooms to a girl at a party. The fact that he made songs like 97 and Bonnie and Clyde, where he was telling a story using his daughter as his point of view to talk about throwing his ex-wife off a cliff and drowning her. The fact that he was making songs like I Just Don't Give a Fuck that were just subject matter filled tracks talking about having brain diseases and not knowing what to name it. It's the fact that Eminem did all that and was still able to go #1 that showed all these other rappers that you can push your boundaries to the limit and the commercial success won't be held back if that is something that you want to retain. But even the rappers that didn't want that, it showed them that they could expand on their subject matter and talk about the darkest shit that they think of. And that's something that you see with rappers that were influenced and say that Eminem was influenced. And it's just the subject matter. It's the very interesting stories and anecdotes that Eminem brought out upon himself that makes this album such a classic. The following year, the Marshall Mathers LP comes out, and the Marshall Mathers LP is pretty much just an extension on the Slim Shady LP. You get the same crazy flow. Eminem even expands on his voices, and you see his rhyme scheme get even deeper. And he's been able to reflect on fame, and that's just a big kind of addition to Eminem's subject matter itself. And again, subject matter is just so crucial when it comes to Eminem. There's a lot of people that are going to tell you that what he talks about has aged like milk or all these other things, and that's perfectly fine. If you can't get with the subject matter when it comes to Eminem, there's just very hard chance for you to get into him in the first place. But if you're into the crazy shit that he's talking about, it is always memorable to hear. And one of the big themes throughout Eminem's music is his disses towards celebrities. And now that he's been able to be in the industry for a year, he's been able to react to fame and all the things that come with it. It just kind of adds to this overall album as a follow-up to the Slim Shady LP. To me, it's even more violent than the first one. Eminem on an artistic level just reaches some of his scariest moments in tracks like Kim. Eminem will get a lot of backlash due to tracks like Kill You, where he just excessively talk about violence towards women. And again, it's if you're only able to get past all of that stuff that you can truly appreciate what this album is. And Eminem shows off this violent, egotistic side to himself in the music and in real life as well. When Eminem originally turned in this album, he turned in around 14 to 15 tracks, and the label said that you don't have a My Name Is, you don't have a hit record here, and they wanted him to make another My Name Is. And Eminem got pissed the fuck off and decided to make The Way I Am, which is just the complete opposite. It was just sort of a diss track to his own label, which again could have just completely fucked up everything for Eminem, but it was again the authenticity behind the music. It's the personality that Eminem has an individual that transpires so well throughout his music. He got pissed the fuck off and decided just to make a complete diss towards his own label, and it turned out to be one of the dopest records in the album. And then right after that, the deadline for the album was coming up, and he finally decided to create The Real Slim Shady, which turned out to be even bigger than My Name Is. And this kind of track is kind of what separates Eminem from some rappers, even some very elite rappers. And even though I don't think this is that big of a deal, at least to me, when it comes to music, Eminem didn't hold back even in his hit records. You know, when we listen to Biggie, it is pretty obvious that in tracks like Big Papa and Mo Money, Mo Problems, he obviously held back when it came to the subject matter, when it came to the rhymes, because he wanted to reach a more radio-friendly audience. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'll never use that as a gripe against Biggie. But when it comes to Eminem, he didn't do that, and he was still able to make hit records. And that's not really something that I think is too crucial. But when you're listening to an album, it just kind of shows you the fact that it never really slows down with Eminem. And again, if you can get past the subject matter, it just makes listening to an album like the Marshall Mathers LP just seem like a non-stop musical piece of just crazy off-the-wall content filled with crazy anecdotes, some of the most dense rhyme schemes, and Eminem will just keep the same rhyme pattern just going on and on. The way he starts in The Way I Am, that cadence is just ridiculous, and Eminem really polished more of his craft in this album, and this is why I feel like the Marshall Mathers LP is a slightly step above the Slim Shady LP, but they're easily his two best albums in my opinion, just because they're filled with his most crazy off-the-wall content, and that's the main reason why I fell in love with his music initially.
So 2 years after the Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem comes out with the Eminem Show, which to me is musically his most important project. And the reason for that is because Eminem wanted to prove that he was able to make a good rap record without all of the shock value that he brought to his music. I feel like this record is a lot more serious compared to the others, even though you still have the very witty and funny rhyme schemes that Eminem has always portrayed. You know, you have tracks like Without Me, and you have tracks like Business Here, which provide the Eminem that everybody at the time loved. You also get a very serious side, and yes, there were serious tracks in the Slim Shady LP and the Marshall Mathers LP, but in here you see him get personal in a political level, and in here you see Eminem reach his most personal level when he's talking about his daughter Haley in songs like Haley's Song. In tracks like Say Goodbye Hollywood, you see him struggle with fame. You used to think that Eminem was exposed to fame and just made fun of these celebrities, but he's actually going through problems himself, and he even says that he regrets rapping in the first place, and it just kind of brings a whole new perspective when it comes to Eminem. And you even see him talk in tracks like Cleaning Out My Closet about his mother in a more introspective level. Up to this point, it was just like, fuck Kim Mathers, and I hate my mom, and I don't want to have anything to do with her. And in here, you kind of see him explain why it is that he is the way he was at that point. And it's interesting to look back on a track like that, because now Eminem says that he hates Cleaning Out My Closet because he's been able to hash out things with Debbie Mathers, his mother, and now he doesn't even perform the song anymore, and he cringes every time that people ask him about it or he has to hear it. But yeah, I don't think that the Eminem Show is as good as his first two records. And it's again because I fell in love so much with the off-the-wall crazy content, and I didn't get as much as that here. I still got plenty of it, and it's still a great record, but I definitely didn't love it as much as the first two. Now, after the Eminem Show, this is where you kind of start to see the downfall of Eminem. In 2004, he drops Encore, which is easily the most forgettable record from his first half of his career. And again, it's the rhyme schemes that made Eminem so great. And when you listen to this album, the rhyme schemes are just not that deep. He is struggling to tell stories like in Yellow Brick Road. I mean, he went from talking about getting bullied in school and being the loser in the classroom to dating a girl and having to decide when to break up with her, so he's looked at as the popular kid. And it was just very weird listening to tracks like that. The beat selection here wasn't as strong. There's just terrible sonic tracks like Puke. And I feel like most of the replay value when it comes to this album is in the tracks that are kind of just jokes and mimics at the time, like tracks like Just Lose It and Ass Like That, which even though they showed the funny side of Eminem, I feel like it was overdone. I feel like every time Eminem was funny and it was great back then, it was because he didn't overdo it. And him being funny wasn't the focal point of the track. It was just an addition to each song. But in tracks like Ass Like That and Just Lose It, which are pretty decent tracks, him trying to be a comedian seemed like the forefront idea within each song that was portrayed like that. Now, there are some more introspective tracks like Mockingbird, and even when you listen to tracks like Evil Deeds, it actually turns out to be serious towards the end end of the record, but again, it's not done as well. You still get every aspect of what Eminem is. It's not a complete departure in artistry. It's just the execution level was brought down to an all-time low. And after this, Eminem didn't even know if he wanted to continue making music. After this, he released Curtain Call in 2005. And at the time, he was debating walking away from the spotlight because he wanted to spend more time with his family. And he just felt a little disconnected. He also struggled with writer's block. He said that he put out 4 albums and he felt that was enough music. Now, to some people, 4 albums nowadays is nothing. But I kind of agree with Eminem here. I think putting out 4 albums is a good chunk of music. And if you personally feel as an artist that you shouldn't make any more music because you feel it's not going to be up to par or you're not going to be satisfied with it, then you should definitely walk away. Like, to me, if the reason Andre 3000 didn't release any more music after Ask Outkast was because he felt that he didn't want to make something that he didn't feel as good or could be as good as the music that he released with Outkast, I wouldn't be mad at him at all. I'm not mad at him. I want an Andre album more than anyone, but I want it to be good. I don't mind waiting at all, and I don't even mind not having an album. That's the reason why I don't want a Mad Villainy 2, because all the hype from the first one, it would never equate to a second one. That's why I'm perfectly fine with Madlib and MF Doom just making 1 record and that's it. But anyways, getting back to Eminem, he made a comeback in 2009 with Relapse, and Relapse is easily the most frustrating album when it comes to Eminem. And before I say anything else, I fucking love Relapse. And I understand that everybody doesn't like this album, everybody hates it, and that's cool, I totally get it. When you can't fuck with someone's voice, it's super hard to get into their rhymes. Now, the accent, of course, threw a lot of people off, but to me, it just added to the overall aesthetic. Him struggling with addiction, him bringing that horror element into the album, and you listening to the record and not knowing if Eminem is even doing okay at this point, and just realizing how bad it was at the time. There was a time where Eminem even said that his body was 2 hours away from completely shutting down. That was how bad his drug addiction was. You feel all of that within this album. Tracks like 3 AM and Insane, those were the types of beats that I felt like Eminem should still be rapping over today. Those crazy, noisy, raggedy ass beats that I feel like work so fucking well for him. Even in the hit singles like Crack a Bottle, they were super catchy. This is easily Eminem's catchiest record post Encore. Easily to this day. And again, the reason why I think people love this album and I love this album is because of the content, the flows, the catchiness. It's not about the lyrics. Like, people are gonna say there's so many shitty lyrics in this album, and I agree. I mean, when it comes to the punchlines, they're not that great, but that's not my main reason for listening to this album. And when Underground, he says, chopped his head off and asked him where he was headed off to. That isn't a punchline that I'm gonna remember, but it's just his flows, his sonic vision, the theme of the album, the concept was executed very well. And even in the refill tracks like Elevator, that is some of the catchiest shit Eminem has ever been able to come up with. And it's so frustrating that Eminem shits on this album whenever he can. You know, he did say that he doesn't hate Relapse because if it wasn't for Relapse, he wouldn't be able to make Recovery, but he shits on this album so much, and I don't fucking understand why he does that. There's a good amount of his core fan base, the ones that actually shit on him when he makes something terrible and praise him when he does something well, and not just sucks his dick no matter what he does after that terrible kickoff freestyle. There are fans that genuinely love that record, and because most of his fan base, the ones that weren't there from the beginning, the ones that don't care about the lyrics, that just care about the Beyonce hit records, they didn't like it, and, you know, critics didn't like it, he decided to scrap his whole vision just to cater to his fan base. And I personally feel like fan input should be nothing when it comes to a rapper or an artist deciding what he wants to make when it comes to music. Fans will ruin this shit for artists. When you look at Weezer, they came out with the Blue album and everybody loved it, and then they came out with Pinkerton and people hated that album. People hated that shit in the beginning to the point where Weezer had to go on a hiatus, and when they came back, the music was completely different and they had to completely change the way they approached their music. And now people look back at Pinkerton and they fucking love it, and ever since Pinkerton, they haven't been able to make an album that good, and people want another Pinkerton. People want more sounds like Pinkerton. People want albums as good as Pinkerton, but it's because of the fan input and caring so much about what critics and fan bases think that it ruined Weezer at the time. It didn't completely ruin Weezer, but it definitely hurt them. So moving on from Relapse, Eminem dropped Recovery the very next year, and Recovery isn't a bad album, but it also isn't a good album. This album was such a, I'm sorry for getting so weird on Relapse, let me just make a very safe album that most people will like. This is when Eminem's hit formula started, and it just got repeated over and over again for each of the albums that he's dropped to date. And this formula is just get a female pop singer and just hold back on my verses and I'll make a hit record. And it happened here, and it's resulted in some of his worst hooks, like in I Love the Way You Lie and 25 to Life. Those were just some of the worst hooks he's made. But there's also moments where he goes in, like in Cold Wind Blows and Almost Famous. I feel like he genuinely showed lyrical progression in these tracks. So there's there's a few glimpses of greatness here for Eminem, but there's also some very, very low lows here. And I feel kind of indifferent towards this album, and I don't fully really go back to it as much, just because to me it hasn't aged at all too well. So after Recovery, Eminem came back with the Marshall Mathers LP 2, which I think is a step above Recovery. I think tracks like Evil Twin are some of his best lyrical performances this decade easily, even including Relapse. I also like tracks like Bad Guy, which was kind of a sequel to Stan, which I thought was pretty interesting and kind of added to the story. I also enjoyed Berserk, which kind of surprised me. I don't usually like when Eminem does his rock shit, but I think he did it pretty well here. Rap God I thought was okay. Overall, there's some very catchy moments here. Like in Rhyme or Reason, I also think that musically that was one of his brightest moments. But there's also, like always, going to be some terrible tracks. The fact that there's a track like The Monster in an album called Marshall Mathers LP 2, that's just a crime right there. That's kind of the main gripe I have toward this. The fact that I thought it was just going to be super abrasive, super hardcore Eminem, and he only gave us kind of little bits and pieces of what it used to be. And some of the songs here would have never fit well in the original Marshall Mathers LP. But overall, it's not a bad album. But again, it hasn't stuck with me the same way most of his albums post-Relapse have. So after the Marshall Mathers LP 2, Eminem drops easily his worst album and one of the worst rap albums that I've ever heard, period, in Revival. And I almost don't even want to keep talking about this album because I feel like it's one of those albums that shouldn't even be mentioned, shouldn't even be reviewed. It's one of those albums that Rolling Stone says, yeah, this is just so bad, we're not even going to give it the light of day. That's how I genuinely feel about Revival. The only track that is kind of okay is Framed, and even like with that track, the hook isn't that good at all, and it's really just not that bad of a track compared to the rest, but the rest is just garbage to me, and this is when I totally understand the hate for Eminem. And it's because when you're making albums like this, it's super easy for people to doubt why you're considered the GOAT. Like, a GOAT would never make an album like this. And I think that has definitely made me lose credibility when it comes to Eminem because he hasn't been able to age too well and hasn't been able to progress as well as other legendary rappers. And I think that's definitely what's hurt his GOAT status the most easily. So after Revival, he comes out with Kamikaze, and here's when I kind of start to break down the problems with Eminem. I want to talk about the main problem for what I think happened to Eminem. First of all, is the fact that he's surrounded by a bunch of yes men. Even Royce himself. I feel like Royce, even though he's a lyrical guy, Royce and the people that are around Eminem are just letting him do whatever the fuck he wants, and that is not good for any artist. And here's the thing with Eminem. When you're making a record and you feel proud enough for it to be shown into the public, and then 7 months later, you're making a music video stepping on that record because everybody shitted on it and everybody else's opinions about it were bad, it makes me doubt your artistic integrity. The fact that you feel super confident about something and then less than a year later you think it's trash, and he did the same thing with Relapse. And it's super corny to me when rappers are apologizing for their previous music. That's not something that a rapper should do. That's something that a legendary rapper like Eminem should be doing. And it's not just the fact that the music is bad, because I also think Kamikaze is a bad album. It's the fact that Eminem doesn't even feel like what he is doing is good. He doesn't even feel like he himself is confident enough to put out good music. If you look back at an interview with Just Blaze said that when he was producing some of the tracks in Recovery, he would tell Eminem, hey, this might sound better if you did this, or hey, I should tweak this a little bit. And Eminem looked at him and said, nah, I don't hear this. And at the time, Just Blaze was kind of, oh shit, I fucked up the money, and he was worried that Eminem would take him off his album. And it took Eminem a few days to realize, like, oh shit, Just Blaze was right. And he called Just Blaze and said, yo, I'm sorry, I'm not used to people commenting on my shit, but you were right. And when I heard that, I knew that Eminem was not surrounded by the right people. And that's the number one aspect as to why I think his music has declined. First of all, he surrounded himself with terrible people. Second of all, he doesn't feel confident in himself if he feels the need to call his albums trash every time he makes a new one and just apologize for the previous shit. And thirdly, what I loved about Eminem was the fact that he didn't give a fuck. He didn't care. He always did what he wanted to do and didn't care about anybody else. He criticized other people and he made fun of other people, and that's what made him so great. But when you're getting pissed off at other people for the same shit that you did to them, or getting pissed off at jokes, which you were known for being a jokester and for being a witty guy, and you're getting mad at other people for doing it, it just kind of, again, takes away from the authenticity of your entire artistry. I thought Eminem won the beef, and I think Killshot is easily the better diss track over Rap Devil. I thought Rap Devil was trash, but the one thing that I will give MGK when it came to Rap Devil was the fact that he was right. The fact that Eminem reacted like this to a joke, it just showed kind of the hypocrisy of Eminem. The fact that you weren't scared to make fun of anyone and everyone about anything. You would go super out of line. Even in Even Killshot, some people thought he went out of line with that Diddy line. And now you're getting pissed off at some jokes about another rapper. That was just so whack and corny to me. And that's a fact. Eminem was great because when he came out with the Slim Shady LP and the Marshall Mathers LP, he was so crazy and didn't give a fuck. People didn't know how to react to it. And now that he's older and he's kind of lost that touch, he kind of seems to be getting the one that's pissed off at other people. And it just shows throughout his music. Kamikaze entirely was him apologizing for his previous work and just dissing other people, because it seems that Eminem nowadays can't even seem to be that interesting or write that well of a verse if he isn't dissing somebody else. So yeah, those are the reasons why I think Eminem has declined in quality so much. And when you just study his discography album by album, it just seems to kind of slowly, after Relapse, just progressively get worse when it comes to his own artistic integrity. It felt like in Relapse he wanted to come back and he wanted to do this scary type horror aspect to his music, and he was genuinely making what he wanted to make, and that's why I think Relapse is so great. And ever since then, he made Recovery to apologize for Relapse. It wasn't genuinely what his artistic vision wanted to be. And then after Recovery, he had a long layoff. I feel like he was kind of running out of ideas, so he made it a second Marshall Mathers LP, which clearly was out of place because there were a lot of moments in that album that had no business being in a Marshall Mathers LP album. Then after that, he clearly went super poppy for I don't even know what fucking reason, but that doesn't even sound like Eminem in Revival. And then after that, Kamikaze just seemed like a super poor, hey, let me try to redeem myself 7 months after my album comes out and smash on the record that I made 7 months ago. The integrity is just gone so out the window with Eminem. Do I want more music from him? I do, because I want to give him another chance. I think if he can find some little bit of motivation and new ideas and new direction, I think Eminem could genuinely make a decent rap record. But either he's going to have to completely take some time off and just reevaluate his pen game, or I think he's going to have to do something creative and experimental like he did on Relapse. If he doesn't do any of those two things, I don't think Eminem will ever drop another great record. And now we're getting on 2019, so this year it will generally have been a decade since Eminem has made a great rap album, and that just really worries me. But y'all let me know if y'all want any more music from Eminem. What do you guys think went wrong for him, and are the reasons why his music is where it's at today? And I will be back with you guys very soon. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you all very soon.